Welcome to another episode of That's Some Crazy Shit with Kelly and James. My name is Kelly, and my co-host is my good buddy and friend, Mr. James. Hi, Mr. James. How are you?
I'm good. Special K. Things are going good here. This is our last show, so I'm excited.
Well, I mean, it's not our last show. It's the last show of the season.
Yeah, sorry, listeners. Didn't mean to panic you.
Yes, I mean, it's the last show of season 3. So we have wrapped, and a season for us is 13 weeks. Sometimes we'll throw in a bonus episode and make it 14. This would be number 14 of season 3. And we decided to do our season closer. We'll take a break and then we're back right at it in September. So I'm excited. We had a really good season, James. We've come a long ways. And I think what we're going to talk about today is crazy shit, but on a totally different level. We've always tried to keep the podcast light for the most part, right? Not, stay away from politics. We kind of stay away from COVID and, anything that we thought, might be controversial. But we have decided today that we are actually going to talk about race and the crazy shit that racism is.
Right. And it's funny because, with people talking about the Tulsa massacre, this is kind of what generated the discussion between us. I like to think I know my history, and I was really disappointed in myself on how much I didn't know about the Tulsa massacre.
Yeah, so for those that you don't know, the Tulsa race massacre happened in this country in 1921. It was actually from May 31st, 1921 to June 1st, 1921. And it happened when a bunch of white residents, mobs of white residents, many of them deputized and given weapons by city officials, attacked black residents and destroyed homes and businesses in the Greenwood district in Tulsa, Oklahoma. There were over 800 people injured, 183 seriously injured, and the exact numbers unknown. And just to let you know, the perpetrators of this massacre, it were white people who decided that they didn't like what was going on, and they decided that they were going to go ahead and get deputized by the city and then go attack this community.
Now, let's get this out to the listeners. When you say they didn't like what was going on, they didn't like that the black community was being successful and thriving.
Yes, it was prospering. There were successful businesses. There were successful people. There were professionals. People of color, black people were thriving in this community, and they didn't like it. So this mob who went and got deputized went and decided to go ahead and just basically riot and tear it down. They didn't like it.
And, you say tear it down. Let's get this, they burned it to the ground.
Yes, they burned it to the ground.
This is what blows me away. They burned it to the ground. They killed people, injured people. And it went almost unheard of, I mean, and that's what really blew me away. This went unheard of for almost 100 years, really. I mean, I'm not saying no one heard about it, but like I said, even me, who kind of dabbles in history, didn't know about it until recently.
Also known as Black Wall Street, because it was so successful. So when you hear people say the Black Wall Street massacre, it is the same thing as the Tulsa race massacre. And so in talking about this, James, my thing is that they don't teach Black history in schools, and they don't teach this type of history in school. I can remember going to school, and I remember every year that I had history, we would get to a certain point in history, but we always covered the basics. We covered England, we covered Pilgrims, we covered Columbus, we covered the settlers we kind of glossed over racism in the Civil War, right? And then we talked about, the expansion west, and we didn't really talk about Native Americans being massacred, as we talked about the mountain men and, the Alamo, right, and, all the good parts, I guess you would put it, Lewis and Clark. You didn't hear about, all the other things that were going on, the massacre, the killing of Native Americans, and I'm sure, their settlements and whatnot, but, those are not the things that we learned in school, as unfortunate as that is. And I don't think we talk about race. Well, let's just cover this. For those that don't know, and maybe some of you don't know, I think, when me and James talk about race, it's close to home. I'm Black, I'm African American, and James is Puerto Rican. And so we both grew up in Salt Lake City. You want to talk about I'm going to call it out. Salt Lake City's some racist shit. I'm just saying. It really is.
It is. And it's funny because I think that is, that, I don't know what you call it, closet racism or whatever, and it lends itself to the systemic racism that's here. And it's hard, it's hard to explain to people who haven't had to deal with racism what it's like, trying to explain to people, right after I got my new car, it's a flashy little car, and I'm pulling out and I'm going to work and I'm taking these back streets, just, it's a lot easier to stay out of traffic. I can still get there quick, I had a cop pull behind me a block from my house, follow me several miles, watch me pull into the place where I park. He parked out front, parallel to where I was parked, and he just sat there. And it's like, okay, I wasn't breaking any laws. I wasn't speeding, anything like that. He followed me because I, quote unquote, fit the description. Male, Hispanic, And I told this story to a person and they're like, well, James, I've been followed by the police. In fact, a police was following me down the street the other day. Okay, let's back this up. You're a woman, you're white, you're middle-aged. That doesn't fit the profile. He followed you for what, 2-3 blocks down the street? No, he wasn't following you. He was on the same street as you.
And just happened to be behind you.
Right, there's a difference. So when you're trying to explain to people this, and then they want to relate it to their thing, and I understand that, but it's not racism, people. Racism is being, you're being taken and you're singled out for this simple fact of the color of your skin.
And assumptions are made based on the color of your skin. I have gone in stores and been followed around the store before. I don't know if I don't recall ever being pulled over, but I've stood in line to pay for things, and the person that's the checkout person has actually ignored me and helped the person behind me, right? So I'm in line like everybody else. It's my turn. And instead of acknowledging me and helping me, they help the person behind me. I've sat in restaurants where nobody's come taking our order. Nobody. Right? And you don't want to go there. I don't want to believe that it's a race thing. I truly don't. Yeah. But at the end of the day, you're sitting here trying to come up with rational. Everybody around you is getting their order taken. She obviously sees me and us, and just nobody helped us. Finally I had to go ask somebody, right? And it's like, you don't want to believe it. So I'll tell you a story. There's a Kohl's not far from my house, and I don't go to Kohl's a lot. So I go into Kohl's and I'm looking for something, and every time I look up, this white guy is like right there. Like every time I turn around, there he is, like following me. And I was like, can I help you? He's like, oh, well, I'm following you. That's my job. Well, okay.
No shit.
Yeah. What? it really pissed me off. And I'm like, well, whatever. So I go check out, and I say something to the manager. I said, I don't appreciate being followed by your employees and then being told it's their job to follow me. Why is that their job? And he's like, who are you talking about? I'm like, I'm talking about that gentleman over there. He's like, well, he doesn't work here. Well, okay. What,
No shit.
Yes. Seriously? And I was pissed. I was just like, wow. I've never gone back to Kohl's. I will never go back to Kohl's. But these are experiences that honestly, when they happen to you, after a while, you just start to chalk them up. Right?
And that's sad. I had an experience like that myself. It's funny because me and my nephew, it became a game for us. How many people can we get to follow us? And all we would be doing was shopping. We went to this clothing store, and back in the day, I still like to dress up. So we went to go get some clothes, No one helped me. My nephew was probably there, half hour just wandering around looking. No one helped us. But make no mistake, there were several people watching us, and you could tell they were watching us. But would they come over and offer to help? No. So me and my nephew left that store, went down to went down to Nordstrom's, and it was one of those pretty lady things, Me and him, we bought several $100s worth of clothes. We had all these bags and stuff, We go back to the original store, and we're walking through, we stop and look around. You would imagine how the attitude changed. Well, can we help you? Well, actually, you can't. Because when I was here earlier, you were more concerned about me trying to steal shit. So I went and I spent all my money somewhere else.
Right? So, my thing about the racism is that it's funny because now all of a sudden everybody's aware, but it's always been there. It just hasn't necessarily been videoed. The first video case we have of, somebody getting their ass beat down by the police was Rodney King. Right? That happened. What I'm saying is that wasn't new. Right? It's not like this was the first time it ever happened. This was just the first time somebody happened to get it on video. That's not the first time somebody's died at the, been beaten by a police officer of color, and that's not the last. And you know what I'm saying? That was not the first time. Was my point, right? So I mean, James, we can say it's crazy shit, but the thing that really makes me kind of trip out about racism is I truly do not understand it, because I want to judge people by who they are, not by the color of their skin. And I really try hard to go there. I try to give everybody a clean slate, and I try to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. I really do.
And I think that's, part of what makes us who we are, We want to give people the benefit of the doubt because it's so, that behavior is so wrong.
I don't understand it, is what I'm saying. I don't understand how you can just make all these assumptions and not like me simply because my skin is darker than yours. That is the only reason. That's the only reason at this point in time. You don't even know me. And you've made assumptions. And let me tell you something. In doing what I do for a living and talking to people on the phone, I have been told several times throughout my entire life that I sound white. People are surprised when they meet me to find out that I am not white, especially with a name like Kelly Morgan. I've been told on the phone by clients that I have a very strong Irish name, and what is my Irish lineage, and what's that coat of arms? I don't have a coat of arms.
No. Irish people do kilts, the different pattern of kilts are their different.
Okay, whatever. People have asked me, those types of questions, and it's like, I'm not Irish. You got a strong Irish name, Kelly. Yes, I do. But I'm not Irish.
Well, it's probably your accent throws them off too.
Are you being serious right now? Are you being serious? Like my accent? Like what is my accent?
Your Irish accent?
Oh, my Irish accent. What people hear is, I don't know, Utahnese thrown in with a bunch of other stuff, but it's a trip, James. It's a trip.
Well, what's the title of your book, my friend?
Well, the first book that I ever wrote was called You Sound White, because people have always told me that I sound white. And that's not a compliment. I'm here to tell you. That's hello, people. So when somebody says to me, and I've had people say, you don't sound white, but people say this, oh, you speak so well. As if I shouldn't speak well, because I shouldn't have a good grasp of the English language because I'm Black and Black people don't speak well at all. Our vernacular is just bullshit. It's just,
I've run into that problem too. I had someone make the comment to his friend, they made a comment to a coworker. They got back to me and their comment was like how, now I have to laugh. You have to, how well groomed I was and how intelligent I was.
Ooh, well groomed and intelligent.
And so, and it's like, what? So because I'm Puerto Rican or I'm a minority, I'm not supposed to practice good hygiene?
And I'm going to call this out because, James, yes, you are Puerto Rican, but a lot of people believe you to be Mexican. And that's funny to me because and again, that is an assumption. Nobody's ever bothered to ask you. They just assume that you are Mexican, and you're not. You're Puerto Rican. And Puerto Ricans are not Mexican, because Puerto Ricans come from Puerto Rico. Mexicans come from Mexico.
Right. I have to, and back when we were kids, it was a lot easier just to, oh, you're Mexican? Yeah, okay. Because you can't explain to them. My father was, full-blooded Puerto Rican, so I'm actually a quarter Mexican and a quarter Native American. So, and like you said, they just make these assumptions, oh, you're Mexican. And back in the day, it was a lot easier. Yeah, okay.
And it's funny because now, do you tell people that you're Puerto Rican? Do you cry it out, James? Or do you just let them believe
they ask me. But I'm not the type to say, hi, I'm James, I'm Puerto Rican. It's like if they ask,
You know what I'm trying to say, though. I know that you don't. I'm just saying, now when people ask you, 40 years later, but people still assume that you are Mexican.
Yeah, they do. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's not like I don't want to be Mexican, but it's the wrong assumption that they're making. And instead of taking time to ask me, they just make these assumptions. And I think that's the thing about racism at its core. Instead of learning about the different race or the person you're speaking with, you just assume these things, and assumptions never really work out. The saying, if you make an assumption, you make an ass out of you and mostly you, but they say me, But it's like, don't make assumptions. Ask some questions. Get to know the person. These are type of conversations that white people don't have. I had a friend who adopted a Black child who, has some problems with behavior. Okay, so she asked me, "How do you have a conversation with him about how to behave with police?" She said, I have to make sure that he's being extra compliant. He's making, and with his behavior problems, that scares her. And then I had that same conversation with the woman who was white. And their reaction was, well, I teach my son that. You should always be respectful for the police. Okay, I get it. But you guys are coming from two different spots. She's coming from, you should be respectful for everybody. My other friend's coming from, well, you know what? I'm having this conversation to save his life.
You're right, and it's a different conversation. And I have two sons. Right. I have two sons, and it is a totally different conversation because they're already under suspicion, right? You're
Yeah.
already under suspicion, first and foremost, because you're a black male. Let's start there. Threat or no threat, you are a black male. And that puts you in danger when you encounter the police. And as much as people may not understand that or want to realize that, and there are white people that will never have to deal with that. They don't have those conversations with their sons or their daughters, for that matter, because there's no reason to, you know. But for me, it's scary because my oldest son has autism, and I'm sure if he encountered the police in some type of situation, he would become very nervous and may not comply right away. And they may see that as some type of weird threat. You know what I'm saying? Because he's not complying fast enough. But I've seen where people are complying and they're still getting hurt for complying.
My gosh.
You know, so
I watch his videos and I get frustrated because these cops, you know, there's 3 or 4 cops on one guy. They're screaming, "Stop resisting," and they're pounding this person who isn't resisting. So it's like they feel like if they yell "stop resisting," that gives them a cover or something. But watch these videos where these police are pulling these people over. They're not resisting, you know.
It doesn't appear to be. You know, and the funny thing is that we can talk about racism, but we really don't have a solution at this point in time, because I don't know how to make people not think of people in a certain way because the color of their skin, right? I don't know how to not. That's why I have a hard time with slave movies, because every time you see Black people in movies, we are either slaves, thugs, prostitutes. We're just not. Very rarely do you see movies where Black people are just ordinary people, just like everybody else, going to work, just trying to make it through life, just like everybody else. We have these labels attached to us. We're lazy, we're this, we're that. And sometimes when you read about the Tulsa race massacre and these mobs of white people, sometimes it's hard to not feel some type of way, right? Because I haven't done anything to you, and I don't consider myself to be a racist. I really don't. Like I said, I really try to give people just the benefit of the doubt. Just I don't know you. And I don't want to judge you because you're white, and I don't want to make assumptions about you because you're white, because I don't want you to make assumptions about me. You can't have it one way. You can't say, let's end racism, if you're not willing for you. They say that people of color, they say, can't be racist, but yeah, you actually can, right? Where, racism is not unique to white people. Right? Anybody can be a racist, regardless of what your color or creed, right? So I really try not to go there. And I really try to give the benefit of the doubt. But James, I'm telling you, some days are harder than others, right? Some days are harder than others.
It is true. It is true. Like you say, some days are harder than others. I had to talk to a young boy who is starting to deal with racism, and it's hard to explain to him that because we're minorities, we have to hold ourselves at a higher standard. And the people who aren't minorities, they don't have to have that higher standard because they don't need to. And it was hard for him to process because he's a kid, but it's like, that's the way we do, we have to be smarter. We have to be, more well-mannered. We need to be, more educated than someone our same age, let's say, or our same peer group, and we have to do that just to try and make the playing field level.
Because it's
and
not
that's
level.
Something you can't, right, and that's something you can't explain to people who are not of color. And then it's funny. I run into this a lot too. People they say, well, Mexicans are coming over, taking over, minorities are coming, taking over our jobs, all these people from all these countries coming over, taking our jobs, and blah, 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 this and that. Okay, let's go with that argument. They're coming over here looking for a better life because their life sucks where they're at. So they're coming here and taking the jobs that other people don't want. Hey man, do you want to go work picking fruit or vegetables in the field 12 hours a day? Do you want to go
for meager wages at that?
Right, minimum wage. If you did and you took all those jobs, there's no reason for these people to come in. But how many white people are flocking to do these, shit jobs for shit wages?
Well, how many people, period, are flocking to these jobs, right? Because me and you ain't flocking to them.
That's one of the arguments.
Well,
I have a job.
Well, but what I'm saying is that, this is my thing. When I was in high school, this is what I think about racism. So I'll give you this story. When I was in high school, my English class was reading Tom Sawyer, right, by Mark Twain. So we're in class, and I think I was a sophomore or freshman, maybe a sophomore. And we're reading Tom Sawyer out loud. And of course, in Tom Sawyer, there's a character by the name of Nigger Jim, right? And so when we get to this part of the book and the teacher says it out loud, everybody in the class turns and looks at me because I'm the only person of color in this class. So everybody looks at me and the teacher goes like white as a sheet because, oh my God. So instead of not reading the book, it was just easier to make me leave. So I didn't have to stay. I got to go to the library while they continued to read Tom Sawyer because I felt like the word made her uncomfortable, not uncomfortable enough to not make her say, you know what, we're going to read something else. But if you leave the room, Kelly, then it's okay if we say this word. And I'm sure they continue to say the word. I don't know. I went to the library. I didn't have to read that or Huckleberry Finn. Yeah, because of course that word is in there, and I didn't have to read those. But that's just how they dealt with that issue, right? So you leave, and we'll continue to read this incredibly racist book. When I was in kindergarten, they were reading Song of the South, Uncle Remus and the Tar Baby, and they say that was some racist shit coming out of Disney. Look at the cartoons that we looked at. Look at the cartoons. Look at, remember the Bugs Bunny cartoon where the jungle dude had the bone in his head and the big lips and the dark skin? And
Disney was a racist. He was an anti-Semite.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know, James. It's just interesting when we have these conversations and we talk about it because it's like you try to explain to people and they don't, people who are white, right? Because anybody of color has probably experienced racism on some level, and that is incredibly unfortunate to say.
No, it's true though. It is true.
Right? And so trying to explain, the privilege, it's like one of my coworkers told me, we grew up trusting the police and the government. You trusted them. No, my family, you didn't trust the police, and you damn sure didn't trust no government. What? And that's just funny how, the police and the government were for us. Well, yeah, because they were there for you. They were not there for us.
Right.
The Constitution was not written for us.
And which is sad because it's a document that when you look at it, could be written for everybody.
Yeah,
if you applied it, the way it could be applied. I can't, go and say what our founding fathers thought, but it could be applied to everybody. It shouldn't have to be well, let me roll that back, because I know there are some things that have been put in there that, are still pretty racist and, keeps the systematic racism going, and, that's a hard thing to explain to people too, it's, when the cards are stacked against you and you don't have a choice or a chance, it's hard to succeed. And I can tell you so many stories about, people telling me, trying to make it, what is it, like reverse racism or something. I have that person once was telling me they were angry because in their part of the country, the Native Americans can take fish and game without a license, and fish, there's no limit. But they were angry because they had a limit. And it's like, okay, well, let's roll this back a little bit. We also stole a lot of land from these people. We killed a lot of them. I think we should be okay with letting them have a couple more fish.
Well, it's very hard for me to wrap my head around discovering something that somebody already basically has, right? So, these people were already living here. You know what I'm saying? And you just conveniently moved them off of their land, which is mind-blowing. When you think about the history of America, it really is some racist shit, man. I was listening to like the old time radio, right? So I'm a nerd. So when I do listen to the radio in the car, I end up listening to the radio from the 30s and 40s and 50s, the radio shows, right? Old time radio shows. And if you listen to these like World War II, 1940, 44, 45, when you listen to the shows that were on the radio, they were racist across the board, right? Even the characters that were of different races were not done by those characters. They were voiced by, of course, white people, right? But the black people were always like, okay, boss, I'm a-coming. Nobody just taught. That's how black people talked, right? And then the Chinese people were like, oh, I saw. Oh, so man, help you. Yeah. No matter what, that's how they talked in all of these shows. And I'm like, damn, that's some racist shit, right? When you really think about it. And I don't know, James. I know we won't solve the world's problems with our podcast, but it is nice to be able to have a conversation with somebody who maybe understands and has similar experiences, right? Where we have had similar experiences. And we grew up in Salt Lake City. So, I mean, when we went to elementary school, me and my sister were the only people of color in that school. Think about that. There were no other little black children in this school at this time. This is what, 1970? 1972, maybe? I'm dating myself, but it was the 70s.
No, it would be a little older because we were 66. You have to be like 74, 75.
Well, I'm not. You're older than me, buddy. So remember that. So it would have been 70, 72, 73 for me. But I'm just saying.
You were 5 years old.
I remember going on field trips to the Mormon temple. Living in Salt Lake, that was a big deal. Going to see where the Mormon Tabernacle choir sang and not being able to go. And taking the bus ride there, right? Getting off of the bus and then shuttled down the sidewalk and we went and got ice cream. We didn't go. I never saw the big organ pipes. I never saw where the tabernacle, where they played or sang, because I couldn't go in at the time.
You know, and it's funny. It's good that, I mean, we talk about this all the time because we live it every day. But I think with the podcast now, maybe we'll be able to get our story out, or not story, but our experiences out, where people can say, you know what, that is kind of fucked up. You know, maybe we need to change. Yeah, you know.
Well, it would just be nice if just, like, again, and maybe I'm optimistic or idealistic, but I just wish we could just judge one another by who we are as people, right? At the end of the day, the color shit, you know, doesn't really matter, but we make it matter. I wish we weren't in a place where we had to check the box, right? Shouldn't have to check the box. Shouldn't matter what I am. I'm human. End of story.
Yeah. Right.
Why does it matter?
Because I have people still when I'll say, well, you know, Kelly and I are doing a podcast, and they'll go, oh, your black friend? Well, I guess technically, but it's like, well, no, Kelly, my friend, you know, she's just Kelly, my friend. You don't say, well, I'm going to go talk to Fred, my Middle Eastern friend.
Right.
You know, but it's like there's certain religions or races that they always have to tag in there. You know, and it's like, well, you really don't have to, because you don't need to have a label. You know, your name is your label. That's who you are.
And for some people,
I'm Jake.
For some people, I've been their only black friend. So
I have more than you.
You know, I didn't say for you. I said for some people.
Oh, okay.
You know, not for you. I know you know one other black person, you know.
Well, I know your whole family.
Okay, so that counts, right? But I'm just saying that I just, you know, the race thing really, it blows my mind. It's hard for me to, I like to think that it doesn't matter, but it does, right? And so when
know what the thing is, it doesn't matter, but it does,
right?
You know,
it's like when they were talking about like Meghan Markle and all that good stuff about her baby, and oh, you know, my God, she's black and da. You know what? Who cares? Who cares? I don't care.
You know, I don't think it's so much she's black. I think she's not a reptilian.
Well, you know, black
That's
people.
what I think on that one.
Black people really aren't reptilians. You know what I'm saying? Best to my knowledge.
I try to light, because this is a hard subject, you know, and this is kind of my philosophy. You shouldn't judge a person by the color of their skin. Judge them by the content of their character.
That's what I've been saying. By who they are as a person. Because actually,
but
you're an asshole.
I just put it into cool words.
True. If you're an asshole, you're going to be an asshole regardless of the color of your skin, right? Sometimes you can just simply just be an asshole regardless, you know. That's just how you are as a person. It shouldn't matter what color you are. So that's kind of where I have a hard time, James. I really do. But I try to remain an optimistic, idealistic person who likes to think that when I meet people, you know, they're judging me by who I am as a person. They're judging me as Kelly, not black person or black lady first, then Kelly, right? I hope it's Kelly, and who just happens to be black.
Right.
You know, just saying.
You know, I get it. You know, it's hard when the first thing people see is your race. You know, when you're told, hey, you're a nice guy, but you can't take my daughter because you're Mexican. Back then I was still Mexican.
Oh. Or when you're told, yeah, I don't date black girls. That's all black girls, right? Because you guys are black. That. I've gotten that too, which is fine. You don't have to date black girl. That's cool. But I hope it's just not because they're black, because there's a lot of cool black chicks out there. Like, I'm sure there's a lot of cool other types of chicks out there as well. I just think you should give people the benefit of the doubt and try to meet people for who they are first, and maybe put the race thing aside and just see what happens. Let's just try that and just see what happens. You might be pleasantly surprised about the person that you're speaking with, right?
No, it's true. You know, it's funny because if people were to take the time to sit us down, people who didn't know us, and just kind of sit and talk and pick our brains, you know, I think we would blow their mind, because it's like, oh, you're not the typical quote unquote minority. You know, it's like, well, no, we're not. You know, we're not the typical people.
No, you're not the stereotypical minority, is what you're saying. You're not the stereotype of what, you know, let me put it this way. When I worked in Salt Lake City after we graduated high school, and I got a job at this business, and I was the only person of color that worked there, mind you, especially the only woman of color, right? I was the only person. So everybody knew me, but I didn't necessarily know everybody. That's a weird feeling, right? When everybody knows who you are because you're the only person of color. But along with that, I also got stereotyped a lot as well. I'll give you an example. Because my hair was in dreadlocks, they would call me Whoopi Goldberg. I looked nothing like Whoopi Goldberg. But because, again, the only person they could relate to that had dreadlocks was Whoopi Goldberg, then that's what they would call me. And I really thought it was an insensitive, it just pissed me off. They would call me literally Whoopi at work and thought it was funny. I looked nothing like Whoopi Goldberg. Nothing.
Well, to them, you did. You had dreadlocks and you were black and you were a woman.
There you go. So stereotype. And they would, they would see Black people on TV, sitcoms, movies. Black women were always portrayed as being angry, right? We're angry. We're single parents. We're either cracked out or we're on a pole or whatever. But and we all have attitude. And so when people would talk to me at work and they're basing everything on what they see off of TV and movies, they're trying to fit me to be this stereotypical Black person that they see on TV because they don't know any Black people. For them, I was literally the only Black person that they knew, which then made me the expert on everything Black, everything, because I'm Black.
And then you get that assumption, well, Kelly, do you know Joe, what's his face? He's Black.
Or you can sing, huh? Actually,
yeah, all right, yeah. I'll get that. I used to get that shit a lot. Well, do you know, Manuel, Sanchez? He's a Mexican. Well, no, I don't know Mr. Sanchez.
My thing is, too, you can dance, too. I actually can. But it was the assumption that, you can sing and you can dance. I actually, like I said, we've had this conversation. In my head, I'm the best singer ever. And my life's a musical. But,
It is.
But, those were assumptions that were made that I could sing. I've had people saying, oh, yeah, I know you can sing. No, not so much. No, not at all. All Black people can't sing. All Black people can't dance. All Black people can't cook. That just blow your mind?
I know. God, I didn't ever know that.
I'm just saying, as we talk about the crazy shit with racism, and we could go on and on with the stories that we've encountered, being followed around, people not taking your money, being followed around, when I lived in Georgia, that's the first time that I ever had like blatant, like in your face racism, right? Because
that's what you said, yeah.
Utah was more of a subtle racism. They would smile to your face, but the minute that you were at an earshot, it was a different story, right? So you never got the blatant in your face. But when I lived in Georgia, in Atlanta, I had never encountered just in your face, boom, I'm a racist and I don't care. And that is a whole different thing, especially with people rolling around with their Confederate flags, which you can roll any flag you want. You know, that's not what I'm saying. It's just when I know that you have something against me solely because I'm a Black person, it's a little unsettling, is what I'm saying, right? You don't like me already off the rip. I haven't said nothing. I'm driving by. I've had people drive by me, nigger. Okay. What do you say to that? What is that about?
Oh yeah, you know, I don't know. It just boils down to that. You know, I guess it's just a hate, you know, or and I don't even know if people can hate, because it's like, do you really know enough about the person you said you're hating?
But Jeff, we talk about energy all the time, and doesn't it take more energy to hate than it does to not hate?
It does. It really does. You know, and you know, it makes you wonder, you know, if you were to tell these people, you know, if you were to let that hate go, and if you were to channel that energy somewhere else, you might find yourself in a better spot.
Yeah, I mean, don't you have to physically, or not physically, but don't you have to think about hating all the time? You know what I mean? It takes a lot of effort. It's like it takes effort to be miserable, right? To me, it's like it's more effort to feel anger than it is to feel joy, is what I'm trying to get at, right? Takes more energy. Anger is, you know, your energy is, you deplete energy with anger. Where I would think that anger and racism are very close to me, because they're almost like blurred, because racism is hate and hate is racism.
Well, you can't have one without the other in that case,
right? So
you can't be racist and say, well, I don't hate people, because that's the basis.
Isn't that the basis of racism?
Yeah, and you can't, you know, you can't be a racist without. I don't know. It's like, yeah, I don't know why that hate is there. You know,
and it just seems like it takes a lot of energy to do that. That's all I'm saying. It just takes a lot.
No, I agree. It does. It takes more than people should put into it.
You know, and so I know we don't have.
If anger comes easily to you and it doesn't take a lot of energy, that's scary in itself.
That is scary in itself, and that anger is lethal. That anger can be deadly. Just what it does to you inside. Because I like to think that instinctually all people are good. Again, I live in an idealistic world where it's all rainbows and unicorns. That's where I live. You're welcome to come visit at any time. And I like to think that just people are good, and that you have to really work at being bad. Because you see people all the time wanting to help, or they say they want to help, right? I don't know. Do people like to be helpful? I like to be helpful. I think I like to, you know, I don't
look at the message. Look at the message our guests have been saying, you know, be nice, be kind, help people. That's the message that they're trying to get out, you know? And I think by us helping get that message out, maybe we will, you know, maybe in our little corner of the world, someone will look at the way they behave a little differently. Someone will say, you know what, God, maybe I should learn a little bit more about Black history. Or maybe we'll inspire someone to go and protest or to look into civil rights, you know? Who knows, Cal? But,
it's not even just Black people. Like it's just all over the world.
You know, if you Black people, just everybody.
If you don't know about a certain race, then at least find out before you make all these assumptions. Like Asians, if you don't know anything about Asian culture, or you don't know any Asian people, you can find out about Asian culture. You know what I'm saying? And learn about it and their history. I don't understand how people can say, oh, I don't like it because you're Asian. No, you're Asian. And then, and the recordings that come out with the Karens and you're in the wrong neighborhood, or what are you doing here, or who are you, and just questioning you because you're different from them. Do you really want everybody to be the same? Because being like everybody else would be incredibly boring to me. I like that people are different.
Well, yeah, that's the spice of life. But going back to your question, do they want everyone to be the same? Yes, they do. They want everyone to be like them, because then there's there's nothing to fear. Because being different, some of these people are just afraid because something's different. And what it's that fear, hate and fear.
But that fear is fear is an illusion. It really is. It's an illusion. Probably don't have much to fear, but I don't know.
Fear itself.
I don't know, James. It's just one of those things where we talk about it between us. We really don't talk about it on the podcast and tell our stories about racism, because at the end of the day, it is one of those things that is hard to explain for me. I consider it to be incredibly crazy shit because I do not understand it. But like I said, I live in a world of unicorns and rainbows, and you can come visit anytime you want. I don't racism bothers me. It really makes me uneasy. It scares me because people are capable of taking your life simply because you're different. No other reason.
Right.
You are different, you gotta go. And that's a scary fact when you're the person, you're the object of that hatred for no other reason besides your skin's darker than them. However, you tan, but y'all want to go tan. See, that's where I get confused. Tanning's big. They even got bronzer that will turn your skin darker. But yet you don't like dark people.
Yeah, I get you.
It's weird. It's an oxymoron. All right, James. I don't want to end our season on a low note. I want to end it on a good note. So I want, I just thought it's nice to talk about. We're not trying to bum anybody out, right?
It wasn't a low note. I think it just got a little more serious than we usually are because of what's going on. Like I told you, it's hard. I shouldn't sit and tell people, go protest, go make your voice heard, if I'm not willing to do it.
That is very true. But I also think that you should treat people the way that you want to be treated. And I also hope that maybe, and I don't know, like I said, I don't know how many out there listen, or whatever, but maybe the next time that you go to judge somebody by their color, just take a minute, and maybe they're a really nice person. You really don't know. You really don't know until you start having a conversation with them. And if you can remove race, which, I guess for some it's harder, but I don't know. I like to start there. I'm not always perfect. I'm not saying that I am, but I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. I really do. This is the end of season 3. This is the final for season 3. We will be back in September with guests lined up. In the meantime, you can go back and listen to the entire season again. You can go listen to season 2. You can even be bold and listen to season 1. If you go to our website, www.thatsomecrazyshitpodcast.com.
I want to add, keep your hearts pure, you people. You keep your minds open.
Until next time.